Welcome to the Eye Opener. I'm your host, Michael Lewis. The Bureau of Labor Statistics had some disturbing news this week. Inflation will be with us for longer than expected, and your money is decreasing in value. Switching gears, Oklahoma Governor Kevin Stitt issued an executive order prohibiting any change to sex designations on birth certificates. Governor Desantis admonished the Biden administration for allegedly secretly flying illegal migrants to relocate in Florida. And Senator Ted Cruz proposed making Delaware a port of entry. And Wisconsin passed the first academic transparency law. The content of school curriculums takes center stage once more. Okay, my friends, let's take a closer look together. Your money is losing close to 1% of its value every 30 days. That's the conclusion from data collected by the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, which released its latest inflation figures on Wednesday. Inflation for the dollar is now at its highest level since 1990. Prices are up 6.2% from a year ago, representing the largest year-on-year increase in more than 30 years. The Consumer Price Index, a measure of the average monthly change in prices paid by urban consumers for goods and services, rose 0.9% last month, more than double the 0.4% increase in September. Food costs increased by more than 5.3% in October amid unparalleled supply chain problems, and used car prices soared by 2.5% from 0.7% in September, while new car prices rose by 1.4% from 1.3% in September. Gasoline prices increased by 6.1% from 1.2% in September, and these price increases were partly due to deliberate efforts by OPEC to reduce its oil production, while President Joe Biden's promise to end the use of fossil fuel by drastically cutting U.S. oil production are the main reasons for this. Biden told reporters Wednesday that he has directed the National Economic Council to focus on lowering energy costs for American consumers following the Labor Department's report. Contrary to the facts now, in March this year, Biden and his economic advisors had said the inflation would only last a few months. The Fed and the White House have so far maintained that inflation will ease as supply chain bottlenecks are repaired. More than 2 months after the Biden administration's disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan, dozens of families of U.S. soldiers remain stranded in the country at the mercy of the Taliban, the Pentagon said on Wednesday. Those stranded include their children, siblings, and parents, as well as more than 100 extended family members. The Pentagon has reportedly not kept track of the number of DoD civilian family members still trapped since the last flight left Kabul airport in late August. Asked about this at a press conference, Pentagon spokesman John Kirby told reporters that he did not have complete figures, but said the Pentagon takes the obligation seriously to our people and their families. He added that the mission to get Americans out of Afghanistan was not over, and the defense officials continue to work on it. To kick off the rescue mission, the Pentagon has created a database of those unable to leave the Taliban-controlled country. In a memo Thursday, Under Secretary of Defense for Policy Colin Kahl asked military personnel and Defense Department civilians with immediate family members trapped in Afghanistan to contact the government to add their loved ones to the database. To this point, military services has been tracking cases of U.S. service members with family members still stranded in Afghanistan, Defense Department officials said. Members of Congress have been pressuring the Pentagon to help those stranded. Texas Republican Michael McCall said the federal government has turned its back on them. If we abandon our military families in Afghanistan, they will surely be slaughtered by the Taliban. In the past month, I have been contacted by hundreds of Texans who have desperately tried to get their friends and family out of the country safely, and that includes the families of several Texans currently serving in the military. McCall sent a letter to Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin and Secretary of State Antony Blinken in September asking them to assist in the escape effort. However, officials note that the military will not play a role in actually removing people from the country. Meanwhile, the harsh winter in Afghanistan will create new difficulties for those wishing to leave. Oklahoma Governor Kevin Stitt has signed an executive order preventing the Oklahoma State Department of Health, OSDH, from altering birth certificates in a way that is not allowed under the Oklahoma law. The OSDH previously agreed to add a non-binary option following a settlement agreement in a civil case. Non-binary people do not identify with the traditional male or female gender assignment. The executive order filed on Monday states that the OSDH does not have the legal power to change a person's gender on a birth certificate and requires an end to modify birth certificates in any way. It also directed the department to purge its website of any reference to modified birth certificates for non-binary people. The OSDH later issued a statement saying it would work with the governor and the Attorney General's office on any birth certificate modification orders that do not fall under current law. Stitt said after the OSDH issued the non-binary option on birth certificates that he believed people were created by God to be male or female. There is no such thing as non-binary sex, and I wholeheartedly condemn the purported OSDH court settlement that was entered into by rogue activists who acted without receiving proper approval or oversight. I will be taking whatever action necessary to protect Oklahoma values and our way of life. In addition to ordering an end to the non-binary designation, he directed lawmakers to pass legislation when they return next year that would explicitly ban the issuance of birth certificates with the non-binary designation. But the State Department announced last week that it had issued the first passport with an X gender marker, marking a milestone in recognizing the rights of people who do not identify as male or female. It expects the option to be made more widely available next year. Governor Desantis slammed President Joe Biden at a press conference on Wednesday for his secret flights that allegedly bring illegal immigrants to Florida.
My view would be, why don't we, if they're going to come here, we'll provide buses and provide them. I will send them to Delaware and do that. I mean, if he's not going to support the border being secured, then he should be able to have everyone there.
He also condemned Biden's absurd double standard of expressing concern about the recent migrant crisis on the Polish and Belarusian border while remaining silent about the crisis on America's own southern border. Reports of migrants being flown to Jacksonville, Florida, and other U.S. destinations in the middle of the night surfaced on the local news last month. The governor's tough talk comes at a time when an unprecedented illegal migrant crisis is unfolding at the southern border. He described the secret procedures the Biden administration is accused of using to send some 70 flights carrying illegal immigrants into his state and other parts of the country. He said the Biden administration not only failed to notify Florida, but the most of it was done secret in the middle of the night. The governor argued that if the president is not willing to protect the nation's southern border, then he should open up his home state to house these illegal immigrants instead of shipping them to other parts of the country. Senator Ted Cruz made similar moves last month when he introduced a bill to create a port of entry in Rehoboth Beach, where one of Biden's homes in Delaware is located. And to ease the huge load of the southern border, the bill suggests creating new ports of entry in Democratic-led communities. Desantis also commented on the fact that the Biden administration, amid rapidly rising inflation, is considering making huge payments to some illegal immigrant families who were separated at the border during the previous administration.
The president has said that basically they want to even pay reparations to people who came illegally. Just think about that. You as an American, you get higher gas prices, you get higher grocery bills, you get told basically to just grin and bear it. Someone breaks the law, comes illegally, and they're going to cut them a check for hundreds of thousands of dollars. That is just unbelievable, but that's what we're dealing with.
Former Secretary of Education Betsy DeVos will publish Hostage to the Cause, a book about the misguided failures of the U.S. education system. Recently, Wisconsin lawmakers overwhelmingly passed the nation's first and strongest academic transparency law, marking the beginning of the next battle for parents' rights in education. The actual content of the education curriculum once again at the center of attention. The bill requires schools to post a list of specific instructional materials online. This way, parents can see for themselves whether the content that awaits their children is academically sound or ideologically extreme. It remains to be seen whether or not Governor Tony Evers will use his veto power on this common sense measure. For years, the inherent right of American parents to raise their children as they see fit has been under a very real threat, with schools deliberately hiding the material taught to children from their own parents. The Biden administration's Justice Department acted on a letter from the National School Boards Association that likened opinionated parents demanding the best for their children to agents of domestic terrorism. Former Democratic Governor of Virginia, Terry McAuliffe, ran for re-election on the platform that parents should have no say in the curriculum taught to their children, and he lost. Teachers' union bosses and their media allies have also made it clear that parents should not control where, when, or how their children learn. In theory, state laws across the country have affirmed the right of parents to have access to the instructional material used in the classroom. However, some Wisconsin school districts are charging up to $5,000 for access to simple public education records, according to the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty. For this reason, state lawmakers recognize that the vague assurances in the current legal text simply do not affirm parents' rights. There are similar stories across the country. Nicole Solas, a Rhode Island mother who tried to collect basic curriculum information from her local school district before her daughter enrolled in kindergarten, got a $74,000 bill for doing so, and her school board threatened to sue her, while the nation's largest teachers union filed a lawsuit to block her from accessing the records. In other words, legally it looks like parents have the right to access instructional materials used in the classroom, but when you really want to exercise that right, then you pay a very high price. In response, academic transparency legislation has been introduced or advanced this year in states as varied as North Carolina, Arizona, Illinois, Texas, and Wyoming. But far-left educational institutions will resort to other machinations, such as the insidious idea of renaming, rebranding, or repackaging in order to evade the ban, or describe current efforts to make the curriculum transparent as bullying and censorship, fascism, teacher abuse, intimidation, and harassment designed to prevent students from learning honest history. To do this, lawmakers must provide parents with the tools to take responsibility for their school's curriculum decisions and be able to see what is being taught before their child decides to attend in order to choose the best school. In turn, for the first time, schools will find themselves in a meaningful spotlight, and schools that don't want to alienate prospective parents will be incentivized to finally turn away from political extremism themselves. Educators across the country have voiced their support for academic transparency legislation, pointing out that it is already common for teachers to submit their lesson plans to principals or to make copies of the materials they assign in order to reuse them for the following year. There is no reason to keep parents from knowing what is actually being taught. Since the beginning of time, people have been looking for their soulmates, that one perfect match who will make our life complete. Get married and live happily ever after. But as with all experiences, the wedding also marked the challenges to come, like moving away from one's family. If there is one word that encompasses the ideal marriage, it is harmony, beginning with the first couple. And the Lord said, "It is not good that the man should be alone. I will make a helpmate for him." Genesis 2:18. According to the Bible, all of humanity sprang from Adam and Eve. God felt that Adam needed a mate and took Eve from Adam's rib and created her. In this way, the world's first couple was formed. Eve was born to nurture and accompany Adam. In exchange, Adam vowed to protect and provide for her. They were two sides of the same coin, born of the same body and united again through a blessed union for fruitfulness. Now, let's look at the situation in the East. In ancient China, way before the CCP destroyed the beautiful culture, it was said that the unmarried men and women were incomplete. Only after they had found their other half and married were they considered complete. While brothers and fathers and sons were bound by blood, husbands and wives were bound only by love and fidelity. In the Book of Rights, written more than 2,000 years ago, Confucius said, "From the distinction between man and woman came the righteousness between husband and wife." Similar to biblical beliefs, people in ancient China thought that men and women had different responsibilities. The husband was expected to provide for his wife and family, while the wife was supposed to take care of the household. This exchange of responsibility resulted in a mutual understanding and respect, which the ancients referred to as righteousness. Marriage was an important foundation of ancient Chinese society and often played an important role in clan organization and politics. The main purpose of marriage, however, was to raise children to be good members of society and to pass on each family's heritage. Because of the sacred nature of the marriage relationship in ancient China, there were strict rules of etiquette. For a marriage to be considered valid, the consent of both sets of parents was required. Marriage was not only a union between a husband and a wife, but also between the two families. The courtship process began with the introduction of two people by a matchmaker. It was considered improper for unmarried men and women to get to know each other outside of the formal dating process. The formal courtship and marriage process consisted of 6 rites, which originated in classical times. The first step was for the man to propose and include a gift. If the lady's family chose to accept the proposal, they could then move on to the second rite, which was to ask for the lady's name and birth date. This is done to ensure that the couple are not related in any way by blood. The third is the approval of the divinatory intimations, which ensures that the union will be a balanced match. The fourth ritual is for the husband to make an offering to the woman's family, and the fifth is to ask for the date of the wedding. Finally, the 6 ceremonies concluded with the groom and bride meeting in person. The newlyweds would pay their respects in the wedding chapel. This 3-step process involves first paying homage to heaven, then to the groom's parents, and finally to each other, sealing their identities as husband and wife. Today, wedding ceremonies are seen as celebrations and often treated as one big party. However, in certain periods and places, such as Zhou Dynasty in China, they were solemn, serious affairs. After the wedding ceremony, the bride's family was not allowed to light candles for 3 nights to show their sadness at the parting of their daughter. In the groom's house, music, singing, and dancing were banned for 3 days to show that he was a serious man who could take on the responsibility of providing for his family. In the Mughal Empire of ancient India, the bride and groom would drink from a gourd ladle as a symbol that they would share any future difficulties that might arise. A common tradition throughout China is for the husband and wife to each cut a lock of hair and tie it together, symbolizing unity and eternal bonding. Courtship in the marriage process has morphed into something almost unrecognizable over the centuries, but the wedding day remains one of the most important events in a person's life. Nowadays, the focus is on the individual and not family-centered. So finding 2 people with the same ideals and beliefs is what a marriage should be is becoming increasingly rare. But hope flickers eternal that by the grace of God, we will find that one person we were meant to spend the rest of our life with and face the joys and challenges together. And that's it for today, my friends. Check out the playlist right here for more eye-opening content. You can join me in the Eye Opener Telegram chat room and follow me on Newmaker, Gab, Parler, and Getter. Now don't forget, please sign up to the email list so that we can stay in touch. I'd like to thank you all. Have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you next time.